mute myself. Okay. Don't forget to change your orientation here. Okay. So if you're doing a portrait, pick the portrait. If you're doing landscape, pick landscape. We don't need to change anything over here under artboards. We just want one. This is all good. Don't change that. What is our color mode supposed to be? RGB. Correct. And then we want this to be high, 300 pixels per inch here. And then this is good as default. So once you have your artboard ready to go in the correct orientation, we can hit create. Boom, it will pop up. It's pretty skinny. It's a little bit different than our 8.5 by 11, but it's that bigger paper, so it will fit nicely on there. Does everyone have an artboard open? Okay. The next thing we need to do is get our image up here. So we're gonna hit file. And then there's this word kind of in the middle. It says place. Click on that. You need to find your saved image here. And click on it. This is mine portrait example that I'm using. You do not need to hit any of these things down here. Sometimes we can put in a template, so that would be nice to hit, but we don't want to do that right now. Whenever you check template, it will just kind of dull your image down. It's nice if you want to trace or color on top of it, okay? So we don't need to do that. Everything else should be fine down here. I'm going to click on place. So now you can see I'm moving my hand around the screen and I have my tiny image. I'm just going to click on the middle here and it will just drop it. And then I'm going to move it where I like. I want it to fill up my entire artboard though. So I'm going to pull it, stretch it. Remember the one magical shift key. Okay, if you want it to stay perfect, you hold down on shift and it will lock that height and width for you. Does anyone need help opening up their image? So the magic shift key, you hold down shift and then you can drag it and it will kind of open it up perfectly, keeping that in place. Yes. Okay. 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 If I pause this, I guess we'll see if that I could cut it. Okay. Okay. Just I'll come back. Or you can pull the corner or whatever and we'll shift and it will kind of go over the edge a little bit. Yes. Yeah. And you can move it around a little bit. Okay, so we don't want to add the dot. Go back, save the JPEG from the you want to back and find it on Google Event and save the image. I don't know if okay. The next thing we need to do here is create a new layer, okay? So remember, you can go over here to these little tabs to layers. We're gonna go down, click the create a new layer. I'm just gonna name it low poly. And then we also need to check, it should be on, but we are just gonna check to be careful that our layers are on. So I'm gonna go over to this top bar to Windows right up here. And the word layers should have a little blue check by it. If it's not, go ahead and check it. Give it a little blue check mark. Does everyone have layers checked? The next thing we're gonna do is we need to go to view. There's a couple things we need to do. All these little things down here, we're gonna click a couple of them. So one that should be checked is snap to point. So you wanna click on that to make sure it checks. Every time you click, it'll probably exit you out of the view tab. So just click back into it, okay? It's under view. View. You might not be able to see it. Your little toggle thing, there'll be like a little black arrow at the very bottom of this. So you just need to toggle down to pull it up. So snap to point is one that we need. We need to click show grid. This one right here. Click. And then after you get show grid, we also need to hit snap to grid, which is right below that. Snap to grid. So under view, you should have show grid, which will now say hide grid if it's on. Snap to grid should have a blue check mark, and snap to point should have a blue check mark. Okay. Anyone confused about where to find those little babies? Cool. Okay, now we need to go to preferences, which is under edit, all the way at the bottom, preferences. You're gonna go to guides and grids, or grid. Make sure your grid line is every 1 inch here. And your subdivisions are 8. So guideline or grid line is 1 inch, subdivisions is 8. And then right here, if your grid is not on top of your picture, it's probably because this is checked. Just uncheck it so that way the grid will be on top of the picture. We don't want it behind the picture. So 1 inch, 8, uncheck this. Yes.
Mine, like, I unchecked it and then checked it again, and the grid is still in the back.
Okay, let me come over.
Oh, I got it.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna try to reverse search because that's also happening.
Like, it was literally on Google like 3 days ago. And
I know.
It looks the same. Well, it's
I
still
should have had
Google,
you guys save it back then. I didn't think of it.
but it's not. This is what I did. I said, I'm supposed to eat a bunch of shit. Thanks, bro. I really can't find it. Like the line.
Anybody else confused?
Well, I think I found it on this.
Okay, perfect. So now that all this is set up in your preferences, you can hit OK. It's looking good. Let me hit play on this really quick. Any guesses on what tool we're gonna use? Close, very close. Not the shape tool. Same thing Solus just said. That is very close. We are making lines, but we're gonna be using the pin tool. Okay, it's the one right above the curvature tool here. This guy. Before we start, we need to make sure a few things over here in our properties are ready to go. We don't want to fill color, so go ahead and turn that off, the little red slash on it. And then you want to pick a stroke color that you're going to be able to see. So I wouldn't pick blue because my image contains a lot of blue, right? So I wouldn't be able to see that very easily. I'm gonna go with red. I feel like red's gonna stand out. Okay, so now what have we been talking about? What should we start outlining first? Yeah, really big shapes. So we can zoom in. I would probably start with her face or her nose or her eyes or something. So the nice thing, whenever we hit snap to grid, that means when we lay an anchor point, it's gonna hit one of these four corners of our grid. So boom, see how it wants to hit, let me zoom in even more. It wants to hit one of these four corners here, okay? The more anchor points you lay, the more triangles you're gonna get. So the more detail you're gonna get. The less you lay down, the less you're gonna get, okay? So when you start, you might keep that in mind. If I just make like 1 anchor point, 2 anchor point, 3, I'm not gonna be able to have very many triangles in there. So I kind of want to follow the shape of her nose here. Bring it out, bring it down. And you see every time I drop another anchor point, it's snapping to one of those nice little corners. I bring it back up. And you always, always, always want to drop your anchor point at another anchor point, okay? If we don't, you're gonna be very mad whenever you go to fill in your shapes because it's not going to work. So we need to make sure we're at least connecting all anchor points or creating a complete shape, okay? Is everyone able to use the pen tool to make something right now? Yes. It will not affect you if it's super blurry as long as you can see where you need to go because we're going to be pulling just colors out of it. Yeah. Anybody else question? Okay, so I would start with outlining main shapes, just like we've been practicing and talking about. I would probably go through, outline her nose, mouth, eyes, eyebrow, ear, her hair. I would probably even go as far to outline the blue shade on her face versus kind of the tan area, outline her shirt and so forth. And then I would start to go back in and create triangles, okay? So I could do that in her nose here. Just make sure that when you start to create triangles, that when you click, you're snapping it to another area where it will connect, okay? So a good way to think about this is if I look here, I don't have anchor points up on this line, right? I put one over here in this corner, one over here in this corner, but it's touching this line on the snap to grid line. So I could drop another anchor point over here or another triangle, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. If you have questions while you're going, don't hesitate to ask. I would rather you ask me than not ask. If you don't want to finish a triangle and you have, I'll show you here, you have this line and you want it to go away, you can hit escape on your keyboard and it will disappear, okay? If you're making a triangle, let me show you really quick. And you accidentally touch a point you've already made, that will disappear. That's just because it's kind of active. The path you're on is active. And so Illustrator thinks you want to delete it. You can hit Control-Z, it will bring it back. If you're trying to attach another point to it, like if I wanted to put a line here, I can just switch over to my black arrow, click off of it so it's not selected anymore, then go back to my pen tool and make that line. Any questions? Okay. I'm not going to go over color today. I thought I was going to, but I think right now we should just work on creating triangles. When you get all of your triangles and shapes set up, the color is going to fly by really nicely, okay? It will be so satisfying, I promise you. The hardest part is getting those triangles set up the way you want it to look, okay? It will be tedious, but it will be so, so worth it. Any other questions? I think that's everything I need to tell you too. Just don't forget to connect to an anchor or part of these straight grid lines, okay? If I tried to connect, let's say I make a triangle over here, I can't connect right here because it's in the middle and not a corner, okay? This would be okay because it's crossing over, but it's not gonna be a perfect triangle whenever I go fill it in. It's gonna get cut off either right here or on the other side. So keep that in mind. Okay.